quickly run to Sears and get new outfit. By the way, Earth, Wind, and Fire, perfect band for today because the president's going to be talking climate change.
Well, you know, the president, if you live or work in the New York City area, today is one of those gridlock alert days where you just should not be driving in New York City because there are all these world leaders. Remember yesterday I was mentioning how all the world leaders who are coming to New York City are going to be met with this vaccination mandate?
Right.
The president of Brazil tried to go out to eat yesterday, and they wouldn't let him into a restaurant because
he's not vaccinated?
He's not vaccinated. So they got a picture of him eating out on the sidewalk in front of a pizzeria in New York City.
The mayor personally targeted him. You know, he's a Trump clone, and he is not for this vaccine. And they said, for example, the mayor of Brazil, we are not going to, if you don't have a vaccine card, the mayor says, if you don't have a vaccine card, you're not going to eat here. So, I mean, that's the type of stuff that's just petty. He should be given some deference. There's plenty of ways to isolate it. There's plenty of Brazilian restaurants that would have accommodated him. And that's it. That's why I'm so embarrassed. And I can't wait for this mayor to hit the road.
The problem for that Brazilian restaurant that lets him in, though, is next thing you know, they get slapped with a great big fine.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So they're just saying, you know what, just eat outside. Besides, the weather is perfect on this, the final day of summer.
Yesterday, I was at a restaurant, and they had 2 security guards outside of the restaurant checking. They needed to see an ID. They needed to see our vaccination cards. They wouldn't let you in if you didn't.
Well, I will say they haven't started with the fines yet, like they did with the whole spacing and everything like that. Governor Cuomo was great at this, but this governor looks like a real nightmare in terms of cracking down. Her big mandate yesterday, put 2-year-olds in masks, which we talked to Dr. McCary about. He said, whatever you do not put preschoolers in masks. It does no good. They're not susceptible.
Lots of people are talking about the vaccine for the 5-year-olds, because now they're talking about possibly giving those shots to 5 to 11-year-olds now. It hasn't been FDA approved, so we're not doing it yet, but that's the new conversation.
And by the way, and that's what Joe Biden said yesterday, that he apparently will get the booster as soon as it is okayed by the FDA.
And that's good, because 3 weeks ago, he called the press conference saying, get ready with the booster.
It was a done deal.
Yeah, it was done, it's not too embarrassing. By the way, if you have a jetpack in New York City, use it today.
Right, get out.
You need a vaccination mandate card to use the jetpack. That's
Traffic is really bad in New York today because of the UN meetings. All right, let's talk about Gabby Petito.
Yep, we start with the Fox News alert today. An autopsy will be done on the body believed to be Gabby Petito.
This as FBI agents execute a search of missing boyfriend Brian Laundrie's Florida house, his parents' house.
Carly Shimkus is live outside the Northport, Florida house with brand new reporting. And Carly, at one point yesterday, the police told people to get back because that was a crime scene.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. And an autopsy will be completed later today on the body believed to be Gabby Petito. So we will soon learn more about the cause of death. You're right. Things are quiet right now outside the Laundrie family home. But this was declared a crime scene yesterday when some 20 FBI agents swarmed the property to execute a search warrant. Chris and Roberta Laundrie were escorted out of the house, placed into an unmarked van. Agents were seen carrying what appears to be boxes of evidence. The family's silver Mustang was also towed away and taken to the police station. We were expecting to hear from the Laundrie family attorney today, but he canceled that press conference overnight. Fox News has obtained audio that sheds new light on the domestic dispute the couple got into in Moab, Utah on August 11th. At the time, or August 12th rather, at the time, police believe Gabby was the aggressor, but the witness who called 911 says Gabby was the one who was attacked. Take a listen.
What were they doing? We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
And a search warrant released on Monday also reveals an odd text message Gabby's mom received on August 27th that didn't sound like it was coming from her daughter. The message referred to Gabby's grandfather by his first name, which is out of character. Meanwhile, the search for Brian Laundrie continues. Alabama police have actually followed multiple possible sightings of Brian Laundrie. So far, those sightings have yielded no leads. Steve Ainsley, Brian?
Hey, Carly, when was the first time we heard that 911 call? Why do you think we got it public yesterday?
Yeah, well, the first time we even heard that there was any sort of altercation that took place between them, we heard about the altercation, and then a day later, the body camera footage was released, and it's about an hour and 15-minute long video. Gabby is very upset in it, and the 911 call and the Moab, Utah police report and body camera footage, they don't really match.
No.
Because in the body cam footage, in the police report, they rule that Gabby was the aggressor because there were scratches on Brian's face, and a witness did corroborate that, saying Gabby was the one that hit Brian. But then when you listen to the 911 call, it's the total opposite. So something doesn't really jive there. The other thing that was said that you hear in the body camera footage that I thought was notable was that police asked Gabby why she got into a fight with Brian, and she gave a couple of reasons. She was upset, she was crying, and one of them, she said that she was trying to start this YouTube career and her boyfriend didn't really think she could do it. So clearly you can tell that this was a toxic and possibly unsupportive relationship as well.
So that 911 call, when the guy says he saw the boyfriend slapping Gabby, that was on August 12th. Is that what led to the video we were just showing of police approaching them on the side of the road?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I'm sure the video that you saw, I can't see it, but I've seen the body camera footage many times, and it shows Gabby, she's carrying water bottles, and that is the body camera footage. So that's moments after police in Moab, Utah stop the car. They pull Gabby out first. They talk to her, say, what's going on? We heard that there was a domestic dispute. She's really upset, and then they go over to Brian. Brian says that Gabby has severe anxiety and she got really upset. So what they ultimately decided to do was separate the two of them for the night. Gabby stayed in that white van, and they took Brian to a hotel for the night. That's how that domestic disturbance call ended on August 12th.
And I understand that investigators are being inundated with tips. They've gotten over 1,000 from TikTokers and YouTubers just trying to help. Carly, we're going to check back in with you a little later on. Thank you very much for the great reporting down.
And he hasn't been seen since Tuesday. It's been a week.
Right, exactly. And had it been known earlier that he's the one who slapped her, you know, they probably would have asked him some questions ahead of time when he was still in that house. But now he might be in Tillman Corner, Alabama.
She got back in her van. He went to a hotel room. When did they reconnect?
Good question.
Yeah, and the other thing is, as police work, I'm very curious to see, should they have been surveilling him? They didn't have anything on him. They just had a suspicion, hunch, gut feeling. But do you surveil somebody like that? Or is that a violation of somebody's rights?
Why did they just search the parents' house yesterday? They took her computer that was found. It was in her van, driven back to Florida. They have her computer, and they're going through that information. Her mom said she stopped posting anything on YouTube, and which was very odd for her mom. And then calling the grandfather, texting her this odd message saying, "Check on Stan. He keeps calling me." And she said she never called her grandfather Stan.
No, never.
Who calls that?
So we're going to talk to a fellow by the name of Ed Gavin very shortly. About the parents, about the parents and the investigation with the police down there, because Brian, you're absolutely right. You know, was there probable cause? If he shows up, you know, he drives 1,000 miles in her van and she's missing, that's probably a good reason to sit down and talk to him, just interview him, or at least surveil him. You can surveil anybody. And a lot of people are saying, had they done that then, they would know exactly where Brian Laundrie is.
I wish they would have, because then it looks like anyone could do this, right? You can come back home, hire an attorney, and you don't ever have to talk.
Just clam up.
Right.
Yep. All right, more on this throughout the morning, and of course the autopsy is going to come out later today. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas issuing a stern warning to migrants during his trip to Del Rio, Texas yesterday, insisting the U.S. border, despite those pictures, not open, and telling migrants, turn around, go home, show's over here.
Yeah, this as those 600 additional border agents are arriving down in Texas to assist these crowds of migrants that are camping out underneath the bridge, as even more are flooding into the southern border town.
You take out ads in local countries, you show expulsions, don't make speeches at the border. Fox and Friends Enterprise reporter Lawrence Jones is live in Del Rio with a first-hand look at the escalating situation. Lawrence, do they have this thing under control yet?
Yeah, good morning, family. And Brian, you're exactly right. I don't know any other way to say it, but the secretary was just lying. I mean, he went and did a press conference. He had just, and I know this firsthand because from my sources, had just did a briefing with local leadership as well as state troopers in the state of Texas. They were telling him about the situation. He admitted privately that there's a crisis going on. He gets out there, goes for this press conference and says that the border is closed, which is a complete lie. Anyway, I had an exclusive interview with the lieutenant governor of the state of Texas. It is very clear that the state troopers in this state are holding the line. Right behind me is the Rio Grande River. The people that are surrounding this Rio Grande River, although Border Patrol wants to do it, they're not doing it. They're handling processing. It is the state troopers. Anyway, the lieutenant governor says, if Texas is doing it anyway, why don't we just hire the Border Patrol right here in Texas and give them the appreciation they deserve? Take a look.
I want the state of Texas to hire those 9,000 Border Patrol agents who are working, give them a $10,000 signing bonus, a $10,000 raise, let them, they all live here in Texas anyway, most of them, let them join our ranks. We'll start a new border force. And when Biden doesn't have 8,000 Border Patrol agents down here, he's going to have to turn to us and ask for help. The Biden administration, at the end of the day, even when we arrest them and we turn them over to them, they release them. They're doing nothing in enforcement like we're doing. So how can we take this over? Let's just hire all of their employees. Let them all come to work for us. We'll have a border force, and when the president has no one to turn to but Texas, we'll say, Mr. President, just step back and we'll take care of it, because you don't seem to care or even be aware of what's going on to begin with. This next idea of hiring Border Patrol agents to come to work for us and have a new border force makes total sense to me. It's something that we can actively do to make a difference, and we'll take this over because our guys and women know how to do this. Yeah. We know how to do this, and we don't tie the hands of our folks.
So, guys, the White House as well as the feds are playing a semantics game right now. They say that, of course, Texas cannot enforce national immigration law. Yesterday, I took a helicopter tour viewing what's happening here on the ground, and you saw illegals trying to make their way again across the Rio Grande. Who was there? The Texas State Troopers. Having them here, right here, was a clear deterrence.
Well, that is great. Lawrence, I read in the local papers down there that the authorities say they have removed 6,000 migrants. They've sent a lot of them back to Haiti, but the problem is they haven't been in Haiti since 2010. They've been living in, Bolivia, or they've been living in Peru or someplace else like that. I read a quote from a woman: "We need to go back to Chile, but now we have no money left and no home. What will become of my children?" How could Biden do this to us? So it sounds like the anger is being leveled at our president.
Well, so let me give some context on this. First of all, the Biden administration has not only ticked off every Republican in town, they have ticked off all the Democrats in town too, because they have created utter chaos right here in this state. Second of all, I think there's a misconception. So the reporting that they're giving out is that most of these people are being sent back. That is not true. Only about 25%, based on the private briefing that I got yesterday with the lieutenant governor from state troopers, only about 25% are going to be deported. The other 75%, as long as you have minors with you, and some of even the men that are here have minors with them, you will be given a notice to appear. As we know, the majority of them do not come back to the court. So those folks will be released within the country.
How do they decide who gets deported? Because I heard they're ramping up these deportation flights to 7 per day now.
I hate to be this blunt, but the kids are the ticket. If you have kids with you, that gives you the ability to stay within the country. And so when I'm out here seeing these kids that are bathing within the river, that are literally having heat strokes and everything, it is unsanitary out here, you ask why. The reason why is because they get to stay in the country if they have the kids out here.
The other thing is, Lawrence, they're not doing the Remain in Mexico policy. A judge told them they got to do it. They're just not doing it.
So let's get some context on that, Brian. Part of the reason why they can't do the Remain in Mexico policy is because the Mexican authorities don't want to deal with it anymore. They cause this other chaos, and they don't even want, Mexico doesn't even want to comply with it anymore. This is an administration that has gone consistently after the Trump administration for not keeping their deals in place. Right. They decided to break this deal without considering the political ramifications or what would happen to the state of Texas, and now Mexico doesn't even want to deal with them on this policy.
Part of the reason is they came out, Joe Biden said it was a violation of international law to have someone cross into our border and make them stay in another country. So you go ridicule the Mexican president, and then you say, okay, we're going to leave the illegals there now, and they're probably saying the heck with that. One of the first things President Trump did is get them to reinforce the southern Mexican border to stop this. Instead, it is an open door.
That's exactly right. Meanwhile, the Mexican authorities, you see all these tents and everything where the state of Texas now looks like a third world country. The Mexican authorities aren't allowing that to happen. The moment they try to stay there and make encampments and everything, they tell them, the Mexican military, to move along, to get out of the way, that you cannot do that.
All right.
Why isn't America doing the same thing?
Great question.
Thanks,
all right, Lawrence, great reporting down there. Thank you very much.
But don't worry, they're all vaccinated.
And also, if you go to another country and you come back, I haven't done that yet, but a lot of my friends have, and they said they had to get COVID tests. They had to make sure that they were safe back into LaGuardia or Newark Airport or JFK.
It's very complicated, and you got to be tested down there. Some people in my family did just that. So yesterday, the White House announced that international travelers can fly back into the United States starting in November. But they've got to have a vaccination card, and they've got to have that negative COVID test. So there seems to be a double standard, because you see all those people, you don't see the COVID checkout line right there at our southern border. Peter Doocy at the White House asked Jen Psaki about the double standard between international travelers and these international travelers on our southern border. Watch.
Somebody asking the foreign nationals who are walking into Del Rio, Texas, and setting up camps on this side of the border for proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test. Somebody walks into the country right across the river. Does somebody ask them to see their vaccination card?
Well, let me explain to you again, Peter, how our process works. As individuals come across the border, and they are both assessed for whether they have any symptoms. If they have symptoms, the intention is for them to be quarantined. That is our process. They're not intending to stay here for a lengthy period of time. I don't think it's the same thing. It's not the same thing.
Now, that's the best part, right at the end. They're not intending to stay here for a lengthy period of time.
So if they want to stay for a week, they don't have to get tested.
Right. And by the way, I'm pretty sure they're not here just to see the bridge. I just wanted to sit under the bridge for a while, and then I'm going to head home. Or I'll go to Kansas and set up a brand new life.
Kansas is great.
I'm not giving. If you're an illegal immigrant, don't go to Kansas.
It's just unbelievable, because if you go to another country and you come back to America, you have to get tested. You have to prove that you don't have COVID. People coming through the southern border, you're allowed to stay. You don't have to get COVID tested unless you might have a symptom. If you have a cough, then what happens? She quarantines you?
Double standard pointed out at the White House. All right, 6:20 now here in New York City. We're going to
Police officer William Jeffrey dies during a shootout while serving a felony warrant. Another officer was shot and is recovering in the hospital. The suspect was killed after ambushing officers. The career criminal's rap sheet dates back to 2008 with multiple convictions. He was recently granted bond despite objections from prosecutors. Jeffrey was approaching 31 years of service with the department. He leaves behind a wife and child. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is proposing a new budget that boosts funding for the city's police department. This a year after she slashed $59 million from the department's budget amid calls to defund the police. Chicago has seen a rise as the Green Bay Packers rebound from an embarrassing Week 1 loss, defeating the Lions 35-17. Hall of Famer Peyton Manning throwing jabs at former rivals, the New England Patriots, during the broadcast. Watch.
I mean, I felt like the Packers were listening to Eli, you and I, our conversation on Friday about we got to come out and run the ball. I think our I think our conversation was bugged, kind of like the Patriots used to do back in the day.
But Tampa Bay Bucks tight end Rob Gronkowski was the one who stole the show.
I don't practice Friday, though, and Friday is Red Zone Day because I don't need practice on Red Zone Day because I'm Red Zone Robbie G already, baby.
Gronk and Tom Brady are within striking distance of breaking Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison's record for touchdowns by a duo. They are funny, aren't they?
That's a great time. The thing that's so sad is Peyton Manning wants to buy the Broncos. That means he's got to give up the show. So that's the problem with that's why I do not buy a team. I don't want to give up.
He can do his own.
We were all wondering, Brian.
Show.
Right, that's true.
He'll own that show.
He'll own the team. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, but will he be happy?
All right. Thank you very much, Jillian.
Sure.
All right.
I have a feeling yes. Always.
As we mentioned at the beginning of the program today, big gridlock. And as you look at just those things, you wonder, are those controllable things for the administration, or are they uncontrollable things?
Well, they didn't listen to the FDA and said boosters are, it's a good thing. It was controlled. The withdrawal of Afghanistan, he made that decision. Yeah. That was controlled. Yeah. The drone strike that kills the 7 children, they made that decision to do that. That was controlled.
How about putting the immigration thing in the reconciliation package? That was controlled.
That was controlled.
Right. So the booster presser, that was controlled. But if you look at the AP, they don't feel like anything was in Biden's control, just circumstances like the wind and the rain, which brings us back to the original song we started the show with, Earth, Wind, and Fire. But Jonathan Lemire printed this out on Twitter. The Pentagon admitted its errant drone strike. COVID boosters did not get full approval. France recalled its ambassador. The punishing headlines, all within an hour, underscored the perils for a president from uncontrolled events. They can define a term. Uncontrolled. This is the most apologetic press, period. And they are desperate to sustain his approval rating, which is now between 42 and 44%.
Right. And he is not only a reporter for the Associated Press, he is also a political analyst for MSNBC. Meanwhile, an analyst for Fox News is Joe Concha. He's looking at what Joe Biden and company are trying to do. And it sounds like, for the most part, they're just trying to stick their heads in the sand.
The Biden agenda moving forward, it's hard to see anywhere where anything is going well right now. I think it's basically his handlers want to make it look like there isn't a problem. It's the head in the sand approach. That's why the president never goes to the border. If he goes to the border, then they acknowledge that it's more than, and they keep using this word challenge instead of crisis, right? So if you just ignore the problem, I think they think the news cycle will carry it away. But now that Donald Trump isn't on the stage anymore for the most part, then the focus isn't solely on him. It's actually on the people that are currently in power. So they know absolutely that they're in trouble. When they see that they're polling in the mid-30s, low 30s on independents, that's a big problem.
Yeah. Apparently the president's speech today at the United Nations General Assembly is going to be about closing the chapter on 20 years of war. Probably going to leave out how we drone those people at the end. Yeah. He's going to turn to coronavirus, climate, and a vigorous competition with great powers, but not a new Cold War, and probably avoid explaining how we stabbed France in the back.
Right. I think it's also important to bring up that the UN First General Secretary said that our actions make us feel as though we want a Cold War with China. Instead of saying mutually America and China seem to be at loggerheads or something that an international politician would say, they say America's policy towards China is bringing us to that point.
And
we
can't, sorry, Brian, were you finished?
Go ahead.
Okay. We can't forget that there are Americans that are trapped behind enemy lines still in Afghanistan, and they're saying they're hiding in houses for weeks. They're keeping the lights off at night, moving from place to place. They're wearing baggy clothing and burqas to avoid detection if they absolutely have to go out.
But they are not stranded.
Right.
We heard that from the White House. Those people are not stranded.
Joe Biden,
we're going to get them out.
And it's uncontrollable.
And Joe Biden is going to run on this mantra, America, we only leave 10% of our citizens behind.
Exactly.
Right. And that's
got to be short.
A lot of pride. Yeah, probably.
I thought he said he wasn't going to leave anyone behind.
Right. Yeah. How about we only leave about 100? Well, give or take a Johnson or a McNeil.
It's crazy. All right, 6:31 here on the East Coast. A chilling 911 call reveals new details into a fight between Gabby Petito and her boyfriend just weeks before her disappearance. Our next guest, an expert in missing person cases, says authorities never should have let her boyfriend.
Today here on Fox, the FBI executing a warrant at the home of Brian Laundrie yesterday after calling off the search for him at the Carlton Nature Reserve near that house. This is a 911 call sheds new light on the domestic dispute that took place before Gabby Petito's disappearance. Listen.
What were they doing?
We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
And that is so different than what we were told a couple of days ago. Ed Gavin is the former acting chief of the New York City Administration for Children. He joins us right now from New York City. Ed, good morning to you. You know, last week we had heard that she had slapped him, and now we hear the tape, and it was he who slapped her.
Yes, exactly. I think the police officer got it all wrong. And ironically, what he did was he actually sent Brian Laundrie to a DV shelter. What should have happened is we needed, if ever we need, she was clearly a domestic violence victim. We needed a controlling intervention at that point. She should have been taken to a municipal hospital, examined by a registered nurse, a physician's assistant, or a medical doctor. I'd even go as far as to say that she should have also seen a sexual abuse nurse examiner, because God knows he may have sexually assaulted her. I mean, she was crying out for help. She was desperate. When he approached the car, she was crying. She said that she had OCD. She said that he'd been in a fight with him. And what does the cop do? He gets in the car. He tells her that, oh, I'm not going to arrest you for DV. I'm cutting you some slack. Then the boyfriend gets in the back of that Chevy Tahoe, that police SUV, and he's taken to a DV shelter. The reverse should have happened. Yeah. I mean, a controlling intervention was needed. They dropped the ball there for real. And then what I found very strange is the cop was telling Brian Laundrie about the problems that his wife was having, how she needed medication, and he was trying to compare his wife's situation to Gabby's situation. He knows nothing about Gabby. Yeah. You know, you need to get that person should have been taken to a municipal hospital. That's my opinion on that.
Okay, so
and also they should have circled back to the guy that made the call initially. I'm sure he was probably a local. Maybe he was a local. They should have circled back with him and found out, you know, and really, you know, tightened his story up to see exactly what he saw. Clearly, she was a DV victim, if ever there was one.
Yeah, and then, Ed, of course, Brian Laundrie, shows up at his house a couple weeks later, 10 days later, in her car, and she's missing. You would think that would be reasonable suspicion to keep an eye on him, but instead it's like, well, it's just a missing persons case, the local police said.
No doubt. I said that in the New York Post on Saturday, and the preponderance of the credible evidence suggested that, you know, they were a couple, they were engaged, they were high school sweethearts, they're gone for 4 months, he shows up with her vehicle and she's not in it. It almost seems like an unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. Did he take the car from her? Did they have a fight over the vehicle? Who knows? But what the police should have done is they should have put everybody